Oh,
Hi.
Hey. I've been here for a minute waiting for you.
I thought that it would be weird if I had come by without representing anything. What kind of podcast are we doing right now, actually?
I mean, this is making me feel so at home already. Seeing the Power Fist, seeing you rock it. Excited to be here. So that's great.
I didn't even see you there. Sorry. Hi guys, what's going on? It's Ariel here. Welcome back to the channel. Kahlief, one of my good friends and someone who is such a powerful voice in the gaming industry. You guys might have seen him on the Xbox podcast after the Game Awards. So, Kahlief, how are you today? How are you, my friend?
I'm doing super well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to finally get a chance to do this with you. I am a huge fan of your work. Aww. And getting a chance to be on your show makes me very, very excited and happy. So thank you so much for having me and your wonderful community that you built. It's been really dope to see you grow in this space.
That's so sweet. Thank you so much. It really means a lot coming from you, because I honestly, it's so weird to think that right now we're closing in on almost 4,200 subscribers. And I look at the number, I'm like, that's a lot of hipsters. It's a lot of them.
All the hugs going to all the hipsters. I love it. I love it. I love it. That's great.
It's so crazy to me to think about, too, because it's like back in 2016 when I started this channel, I thought this will never grow to this capacity. And now everyone that I either am interacting with or is subscribed to me is just as chaotic, lovingly as I am. And I'm here for it.
I mean, good chaos is good chaos, right? Like that's what they say. You want people with good trouble to be able to come to be in your circle. That's great.
I just want to say, to start off on kind of a wholesome note, I would say, you're also friends with Paris. And I actually saw a lot, not just a few, but a lot of tweets referencing a cooking of sort, if you will, some lore. And I want to know exactly where the entire lore base came from of where you can't cook, apparently. And I asked this to Paris when he was on the podcast last time with Danny and Tony. And he was like, you're going to have to, I think to paraphrase him, he said, you're going to have to ask Kahlief. And now I want to ask you.
Well, first of all, I'm happy you had Paris, Danny, and Tony on. I love all of them. So much. Those are like friends from God knows how long ago at this point. But the I can't cook thing started like probably almost 5 or 6 years ago now at this point.
Oh, wow.
And Paris and I, we lovingly rib each other all the time about a lot of different things. And this has now been the kind of like cornerstone that people know our relationship around, our friendship around. So he was, it was probably a Christmas of like 2015. No, not 2015, because I can't do math. Whatever the heck 6 years ago was.
Wait a second, 2024 to
2024. 6
my brain can't do math either.
It's like 2017, 2018.
2018, yeah.
Everyone's gonna listen to this podcast like, these two can't add. And I was like, yeah, I know. And he was on Twitter and I was on Twitter. And he was posting something about this 7-Up cake that he makes, which I've had 7-Up cake. I love 7-Up cake. It's really, really good. And I gave him a little bit of crap. I don't know if you can cuss, but I'll try not to.
No, it's fine. Absolutely.
Okay, so I was giving him a little shit about his 7-Up cake. And I was like, you can't cook anything. This is trash. I know you probably bought this thing. This is not, you don't make any food. And he replied with this video. And he said, word for word, he said, I don't make food, I make art. and it made me laugh because it was really like he just like deadpan delivered it, and it was like so perfect, and it was great. He was like talking to his wife off camera when he did it, and then had the camera on when he was talking about it. And I took that clip from that video, and I made a beat from it of me like doing a hip hop beat with him talking about how he makes art and not food. That then snowballed into him having a reply and us going back and forth. And that kind of accelerated and got a little bit bigger. And he was like, I got something for you. Because the biggest thing about like how I couldn't cook was like, I made my ribs at the time. I love barbecue ribs, and I would make my ribs in the oven, where people in the fake culinary world are like, that's blasphemous, you're not supposed to you're supposed to put them on a grill and da. And I was back home in New York, and if you're in New York, if you don't have a big backyard, and if you're living inside the city, most people don't have backyards. You're like cooking any barbecue stuff on a small, probably illegal grill on your balcony.
Yeah, exactly.
Cooking stuff. So I had to make ribs in the oven. Mind you, those ribs were fantastic, even in the oven. And I don't care what anybody says, because they were really good. And everybody loved them. So we had this back and forth. And then everybody on the internet was like, oh my God, Kahlief makes ribs in the oven. He can't cook. And then Paris got a grill from a company called Traeger. And then he started to go even harder about all the stuff about me not being able to cook because they gave him this grill because of all the stuff that we were doing back and forth. Fast forward a little bit past that, I started to talk a bunch of crap online about him, and then the company Weber sent me a grill. And then we were good. There was some really fun stuff was supposed to happen between me and Paris with the grills that we had, but the Weber folks got a little bit cold feet. And they were like, we don't want to do like an online beef thing because we want to keep it all kind of high level. And anybody who's paid attention to the whole beef thing between me and Paris is all know it's all in fun.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not really being mean to each other. We love each other a bunch. Fast forward, he gets to go on. No, I'm trying to think which happened first. I think he went on the Xbox showcase. So he was getting a whole bunch of love from Xbox. He knows, anybody who knows him knows we've been doing work with them for a long period of time. And he got this really fantastic opportunity that really like raised his ceiling, and he got to host the Xbox showcase for 1 year. And the infamous Ka Can't Cook controller came up, where he was like, Xbox was kind of debuting their controller, like customized controller thing. I keep forgetting the name of it. And he put on the front of the controller that Ka can't cook. Now, mind you, this thing is seen by millions of people. Like, this was a really big one, too, because this was like one where they were like coming back into talking about more stuff about the Xbox Series X and all this cool stuff. And this was huge. Like, millions of people saw this thing and saw me get roasted live on TV by my good friend. So I'm sitting at home because he's like, I got something for you. Like, he's teasing me for weeks. He's like, I got something for you. And I was like, oh man, this is gonna be bad. Like, I don't know what this is. I was teasing you and playing around, and now it's gonna get real. So I'm sitting there scared for like weeks. Like, what is he gonna do? And then he drops this whole Ka Can't Cook thing on there. Now, mind you, the thing that made it really messed up was that like he had co-conspirators. Head of marketing, Aaron Greenberg, like knew about it. It didn't tell me. And we were like, we're all cool and we're friends. He's like giggling. He's sending me messages. He's like, yeah, we got something fun for you coming up on the showcase. And I'm like, oh my God. Like Phil Spencer knows all the kind of stuff. So I was like, oh my God, like this is going to be so bad. Fast forward past that one more time. I go out and I'm like, I got to get him back. Because now I've just been roasted like nationally, like across the world. The planet knows that I supposedly can't cook. So I go on Cameo. And I basically pay for a bunch of messages to say that he can't cook, but it was all celebrities. So it was like Cedric the Entertainer. Gosh. It was like Montel Jordan sang a song about how he can't cook. Kurt Angle, the famous wrestler, said he couldn't cook. All these Redman really got at him. The rapper Redman got at him real bad, so much that I had to edit it down because I didn't want to make him feel like he was like actually being mean to him.
Oh my gosh.
And it was like 6 or 7 people, and we did it all to this song, the Sesame Street song that was like, who are the people in your neighborhood, in your neighborhood, in your neighborhood? So I like went out, we like recorded me walking around, and every time you would get to these are the people in your neighborhood, I would go like this and do the thumbs up, and then it would pause, and then you would go to another celebrity roasting Paris. That then went up again. He got on another showcase. He had a patch on when he was doing this really dope thing in Morocco. And it had like my name on it that said I can't cook on it. I went and I have an award show that I do called the Spawnies.
Yeah.
I did something in there with WWE wrestler Xavier Woods. It had a whole skit around that. And then it kind of lastly culminated with the folks over at Dead Space. There's stuff even in between that. Before the Dead Space thing, Spawn on Me got a chance to be in Hitman 3. They were like called. So we got a chance to have like these special missions in Hitman 3.
Oh, wow.
And so in Hitman 3, when you're doing an assassination mission, you have to write lore for it. So the lore that I had for it was who's going to be my target. And it was this business person. and you had to go into this restaurant, and you had to kill. You had to basically kill the businessman by being a chef who was supposed to be Paris. He was supposed to be cooking.
Oh no.
So the person was supposed to die from food poisoning, and the analog for the name of the evil corporation was Paris, but it was all like an abbreviation. So it was like the evil corporation Paris is looking to poison this man's food. So that happened, and then Dead Space happened. Dead Space remake happened.
Yes.
And I have been doing some work with them for the past like 2 years, where they have this really dope creator council, with all these fans for the game. And I get a message from one of the developers, and they were like, "Hey, we have something really fun for you." And I was like, "What?" Because like I didn't do anything super different than anybody else who was on the panel, but they had been paying attention to the "Cock Can't Cook" thing. So if you go into one of the bathrooms early on in the game,
it has "Cock Can't Cook."
Says "Cock Can't Cook" scrolled on the wall, and I saw it when he sent me the picture, and I was like, "Oh, did you guys like Photoshop this?" And they were like, "No," and I was like, "No,
So
this
cool.
can't be in. No, are you serious? This is in the game." Now, mind you, I am a huge Dead Space fan. I love horror. I love horror movies. I love horror games. And now I'm like part of Dead Space lore because I'm the only person on the planet with an Easter egg in that game. So it's been this really fun thing going back and forth between he and I. And I think people are now mad at us now. They're like, "Shut up. We don't want to hear you, bud. Like, finally cook something, both of you." And it's been so much fun. Like, again, it's like this lovingly like ribbing of each other and like giving each other crap. And you know, it's a space in which the internet loves to have like real beef, and like we have this fake beef that people have really attached themselves to. Like Xbox has gotten into it multiple times. Like Phil Spencer for our 500th episode he said this really nice thing about like how I can cook.
Oh.
You know, head of Xbox, all this cool stuff. And it's great. It's like, again, what the industry should be. Like, it should be fun. It should be, you know, light and all that kind of stuff. And we just continue to have fun with it until somebody pays us to actually cook something.
See that now? Wow, that's the lore behind it. I never realized how fun it was actually. Like at first, I kind of thought it was just like an interesting ribbing of one another, but it's kind of like a video game and like Elden Ring. I need to know the lore. I need to understand.
I was jokingly talking about this online the other day when I had a whole bunch of people being mean to me in my mentions, and I was like, I need to make a shirt and sell it that just says on the front, "At least I get paid for my opinions."
It's true though.
But it's true. It's true. Like that's the thing is I come back to that all the time. Is like I got into this industry and this business because I'm a big video game nerd. I've been a video game nerd since I was 3. You know, and I'm like knocking on 46 this year. But it's like,
wait, really?
Yep.
I thought you were my age.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm old.
No, you're not
but
old.
I'm old. I'm an old man. But it's that stuff of like I really do look at this as all like has to be fun. Like if this is not going to be fun, then why am I going to do it? And I want to be around people who are having fun in the video game space. So like, yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff that goes on in the industry, and you know you have to kind of have your finger on the pulse of all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I want to just pick up the sticks and have fun and play with people, talk a little bit of crap, get a little competitive, and have fun with all this stuff. That's what it's here for.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why I got into the gaming industry as well. That and Resident Evil, my undying love for the first game, because Resident Evil 1 Remake was the first game I ever played in my existence. And it's one of the interesting parts too, because originally, here's some of my lore, I was supposed to be a musician, and I was almost signed to a record label when I was 21. And it was right before I graduated from college, like a couple of years before I graduated. And they put in the contract that they have a holding over my funds. So and this was before I even signed the contract, I actually talked with my parents because my dad, very good with negotiation, reads all contracts very thoroughly. And I'm so grateful for that. Or else I would have been stuck in like a 360 deal or something like that.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I stopped music entirely after that because it just got me to such a point of where like, well, if I can't do this, then what's going to happen? And then I found YouTube and I was like, okay, I really like this a lot. And I started April 5th of 2016, which is the anniversary is coming up soon for 8 years. And I think it's really interesting too, because I started with a faceless, video doing Five Nights at Freddy's 4. And now it's like, oh shit, I'm getting like a AAA game key for Rebirth. Like it was such a cool thing to be able to see how my love of gaming can actually turn into a career that is sustainable, and it's something that I can always love. And I feel like we share that mutual connection of where like we love games and we want to be able to empower people through those games.
Yeah, 1,000%. I think for me, it's always been about like, what is the connective tissue that brings us all together? And I think for me, when I started, I've been in the gaming industry now probably around 13 years in between a bunch of stuff. I started as a writer too, even though I don't consider myself a good writer. But I started my first gaming, journalism job, air quotes journalism job was I wrote for a site called PS3 Attitude.
Oh, nice.
Way back in the day. And I learned a lot just through the process of, how do you talk to people when you're trying to get keys for games, or how do you quote someone properly, all of those small things that you kind of learn in the process of understanding how you can be a part of an industry that you really want to be in. And then doing the podcast now for 10 years, it's been a long time of being able to kind of understand like what is the value of having a voice in the space, and how do you treat that properly, and how do you treat that with care and guidance, and how do you bring people along with you? So it's a lot of learnings through a decade and some change, but it's been great to kind of go through that ride.
It's amazing though, because when we think about the gaming industry, and this is getting into one of the first topics that I want to really dive into with you, is that we probably, and I'm guessing, I don't want to assume, but that you had a different perspective on the outside rather than being in the gaming industry itself. And I feel like there's so many misconceptions that, go around being a journalist or being a content creator, or just being someone who's in front of the camera doing a podcast all the time. It's one of those things of where like I see the consumers' opinions on Twitter all the time. And it baffles me how uneducated a lot of people actually are, because when it comes down to it, they have their perspective, and I don't blame them for having the perspectives that they do, because they're not actually in the industry. They're not working in the industry, and that's completely fine. But one thing that actually just makes me kind of want to claw on a freaking chalkboard is the fact that they don't ask questions. And that's the one thing. It's like, it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to be curious. If you're not curious, then you're just assuming.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I had a really transformative moment way back, because I didn't talk a bunch of crap online, but I've been on Twitter for like 12, 13 years, something like that, probably even a little bit longer than that. And I remember being a forum junkie and like going into forums and like talking a little bit of crap about stuff, because I was ignorant of how things worked. And then I went to the Game Developers Conference one year, GDC, and sat in a panel with a developer who was talking about, they worked at Media Molecule at the time. It was a panel done by Media Molecule. I'd gotten a press pass and put in for it, and flew to San Francisco for the first time, and went and sat in a panel with one of the developers, and they just talked about the process of making a very specific thing in the game. And it was like watching an alien speak to other people, but everybody else in the room understood it but me. I was the only one, because I was like, everybody else in that room were developers, and I was like going as like enthusiast press. And I left that conversation and then went outside and talked to somebody else who also worked there about the PS Move, because they had worked on it. They were one of the developers of the hardware. And just talked to him, and he was like a really young cat, and he was just talking to people, and it sounded like he was talking a whole nother language that I just didn't understand. But it was fascinating because he was amazingly smart. He was like really well spoken, like really held himself up in a really proper light. Like, it's like, this is what I do. This is the stuff that I do. And it was really inspiring, but while also making me feel incredibly stupid, which wasn't bad though. You know what I mean? Because it was one of those like learning moments of like, oh, like this is really hard. Like, this is science times science, right? Like, This is a lot of stuff that's happening in the back end of a thing that I just pick up and play and use all the time without thinking about all the ways that those things actually come together and the brilliant people who have to learn about doing this stuff. So it changed the way I stopped talking crap from that day forward. Like, it was a thing where I was like, oh, okay. I understand now that I am punching above my weight when I talk crap about all of this stuff.
And it's the same thing that happens whenever people get onto like the Steam forums, for example, and they'll talk about a bunch of this stuff and say, why are developers so lazy? It's like, developers aren't the ones that are lazy. You were just incredibly entitled.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I think, and you know, the conversation from a consumer perspective is just very different, right? Like, you know, having now worked in both the podcasting space for a decade and content creator space for a long time, and then having worked within the industry at multiple different jobs. I've worked at Intel in their AR and VR space for a couple of years. I worked at Riot in the diversity and inclusion space. I worked at Firewalk as a community manager and some stuff, and I've worked on some other games in PR too. You get a way different understanding of the process of making games when you get a chance to like really talk to people and be in the weeds with people about what happens. But if you're a consumer, you just paid $70. You're like, I don't care. I just need it to work and it needs to be pretty, right? It's just different, right?
There's no empathy though. That's the thing that lacks a lot of the time. And I got to see it from the inside, and it's like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I see it, and the way that news goes so fast, the way that you have to write, like, I was writing articles within an hour, getting to go, okay, publish. We're gonna, you know, edit it really like quickly in 5 minutes, and then we're gonna go publish this. Deal posts, guides, like all this kind of stuff. People think that, oh no, we're just reviewing games all the time. No, the majority of the time is either deal posts, guides, or, you know, tech reviews that we're doing and informative stuff. You know, if there's something that we need to cover that's a game review, we're prepping for that at least a month and a half ahead for embargo. And people don't understand that. That's why they're saying, like, why is it all there just talk about like games and before the game is coming out? It's like, so we can hit the publicity mark so it comes out. It's just marketing. All of it is intentional marketing so people get the information that they need. And I feel like so many people don't understand this from a consumer standpoint, which again, don't blame them at all whatsoever for not understanding it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's there's so many levels to not only the kind of like journalism work, both kind of hard journalism and investigative journalism, and then what I think most of us do, which is kind of like enthusiast press stuff, which also gets a really interesting, weirdly bad rap these days, which is weird because, you know, the big conversation around that has always been traditional journalism is getting pushed out for the sake of YouTubers and streamers, and enthusiast press are also in this weird space where we are trying to do, you know, aspects of traditional journalism without having to abide by the traditional journalism rules of like, don't take any swag or any of that kind of stuff, which I think is kind of silly. But it winds up being a really good space to be able to be that bridge for the consumer if they feel like they can trust you, right? I think that's always been the biggest part of that conversation has been around trust and how people are both very, very selective with their trust, which is reasonable, and also very fickle with their trust as well, which is really interesting too, where it's like people are quick to say, well, that person at Kotaku or whatever is a shill, but this person who just got this deal done with this other team and is basically, you know, full on marketing for them, we're going to believe them straight off because we have a relationship with them in those ways. And it's a really weird, you know, a conundrum for all of us who are doing this work, right? Where the audience is going to believe what they want to believe, and if they feel like they rock with you and that your word is good, then they're going to do that. And if not, then, you know, they'll some will flip on you and say, well, why didn't you say this, or you missed this thing. We're seeing that now with a lot of conversations in Dragon's Dogma, but that's a whole other thing.
Done whenever I reviewed Suicide Squad, and that was the first actual review that I did for Windows Central that was published to like a mass community of people. And I gave it a positive review. I really liked the game. I was really for it, and I loved the different take that it gave on Batman and the, you know, the story behind the Joker and what Harley Quinn represents as a whole. and people were like, she's a paid shill. I'm never gonna trust a word out of a journalist's mouth. And it's all these different things of where it's just like, I wonder, and I truly naively wonder if people are stubborn and what's the right word to use here? Stubborn and really like bullheaded because they choose to be that, or because they do it for the clicks. Like,
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, if there are whole swaths of content creators on YouTube and other places that do just that kind of work, which is super frustrating. I think the audience has bought into a lot of that as well, and kind of have mimicked what some of that kind of space is. Like, studies have shown over the years that, negative information gets much more of a push than positive ones. But I do think it winds up being a disservice to all the levels of the playing field, because it changes the way the relationship between content creators and marketing teams and studios works, while also not being able to also keeping people from being their truest selves with the work that they do, because there is this fear of losing your audience if they stop believing you because of the way the space works, right? So it's a double-edged sword, but I think, like you have done over the past, you said 8 years now, almost 8 years. Me for the past like 10 and 12, like once you grow an audience that believes and understands that you're coming to this with a really good intention, then people will just rock with you, right? And that part is the thing that kind of is the most important thing that I think is there.
But once you get to a point of where you're successful and you're gaining traction, then people are like, whoa, you can't exist. Stop. Don't do it. Don't do it.
I mean, the thing that makes me like annoyed and frustrated at that layer of commentary that we see is it's really belittling to you as a content creator, right? Because it's like, you can be bought off with a $70 game, or you can be bought off with a trip to go cover a thing. Like, people don't understand that, like, that stuff is work. Yeah. Like, it's not just going on vacation or going like yes, I've been lucky enough to have been flown out to some things. I've been lucky enough to go to some really fun events across the United States and do some really fun stuff. But that's never changed my opinion about any game that I've been reviewing. I've done trips with companies and then said that game wasn't great, and that's been fine. But this idea that once you take in a key, or like, and we see other creators do this, of like this really fake pious kind of thing of saying like, well, I didn't take a game, I didn't get a review key, I bought it on my own, so therefore my opinion is more stalwart in some way, which doesn't make a lot of sense at all. It's like, yes, that experience is the same as what everyone at home is going to have, but if that's the case, then in the grand scheme, you don't need reviews if that's the case, right? You don't need preview coverage if that's the case. I tell people all the time, if you don't believe people who are in the press about their opinions, and you go buy the game, and you don't like it, maybe you should wait. Maybe that should be your new process for buying games, is to let people play it, talk to your friends about it, and don't buy it on day one. I think that's totally fine too. But humans are really interesting because they lie a lot. And humans will say a thing but mean something totally different, or act in a totally different way. I, as a person who understands to a certain extent my own personal flaws and my own ways that I BS about my own existence, like there are things that I do that I BS about myself, and I'm like, I really should be doing this, but I'm not doing this. People are afraid to say that they have FOMO, right? FOMO is a huge thing. We all have FOMO. But gaming has a really interesting layer, because FOMO gets monetized, and FOMO gets pushed into a space where you can pay for the ability to get something a little bit earlier than other folks. The thing that's beautiful about what we do is we get a chance to go do all of that stuff even earlier than that process, but there's work tied to that. And that's what people forget. So
yeah. That was the same thing with the Outlast trials. Like, I was sent that key a few days in advance before embargo hit. And that was actually my first time I had ever got a quote from the article that I did on one of the placards from that Outlast did. Like, Red Barrels put my quote.
That's rad.
And I'm like, what universe, what alternate dimension am I currently living in right now? And it was so interesting because it was like, so many people were like, oh, you got this in the thing, you got this, you did this. I'm like, A little bit of like imposter syndrome going on here, but yeah, no, that's absolutely great. That's awesome that that thing is a thing. Yeah. I know. So whenever people are like, no, you did this or you did that, it's like, no, we worked really fucking hard for this thing that you're saying that we're a shill for. And it's so, it absolutely kills me every single time because I'll see like these such offhand comments and it's kind of like the kid in class who didn't do the homework, but he still feels like he has to say something.
1,000%. You nailed that. It's so much of that.
It's just like, sure. I know this is going to sound really bitchy, but maybe just shut up. Like,
it's funny. But here's the thing, and I'm happy you said that because I tell people all the time. I get asked a lot, Kahlief, you know. Oh, I get asked from both directions. Folks who actually want to know and people who are trolls, right? And the people who actually want to know, they'll be like, "Well, how did you get?" Well, the people who really want to know is like, "Hey, Kyle, I would really love to do what you're doing. How can I do that?" And then the flip side of that are the people who are like, well, who the hell gave him a free code? Because I never heard of him. Why does he deserve to get one? Right? So you get it from both angles, which is fine. And my answer to both folks is I am not special. I am not. You can do exactly what I'm doing. Spend 5 to 6 years, go network, go find dope things to cover, spend a bunch of money to go meet people and talk to them. And then at some point, if you build a good reputation for yourself and a good reputation through your work, you'll probably get some keys too. It's not hard. The space is even more open now than it ever was when me and folks like Paris and Danny started, because the technology is easier to use now and to make whatever kind of content you want. The more people are looking to engage with audiences in the ways that they're doing now. And YouTube, TikTok, all these things have grown to a space where you can just boot up a camera on your phone and make content. That was not the case when we started doing this work. So I was like, I'm not special. You can do exactly what I'm doing. You just got to bust your butt and stuff. You're a subject matter expert at certain things, right? And if you've learned about your craft and you've learned about a genre, like you at this point having done so much work on the Souls-like space, you're a subject matter expert on Souls-likes in a lot of different ways. You've played a bunch of them. You have an understanding of the systems that underlie them. You have an understanding of why people like them. So like if someone were to come to you who didn't know anything and is like, how do Souls-like games work? And you were to talk to them and they were to then interrupt you and then tell you how it was actually working. That's the internet.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
And it's silly because it becomes this thing of like, no, well, I've done the work and have had experience in a space where I can talk about a thing eloquently and understand it and be able to pull that back to you in an instant without a script, without needing to do that kind of stuff. But people will look at that and be like, oh, well, that person is pompous because they know stuff. And I'm like, what are you supposed to do with this life? Not know stuff? You're supposed to like just sit on knowledge that you have while also trying to be mediocre. That's not what anyone wants. No one wants that.
It was the same
so
thing.
It winds up being really funny.
People were talking about everything that, and this goes actually perfectly into the next subject I want to talk about.
Yeah.
It was the same thing with Sweet Baby. Everyone was assuming that they knew what a diversity, consultation group was like, when in reality, they had no clue. And I want to preface just this by saying, I'm going to look directly in the camera because that's what you guys deserve, who are trolls, is for me to make you all understand. Now, I'm not talking to the good people. You guys it's okay. You guys are good. Don't worry about it. Just go. It's fine. Don't worry about it. But for people who are constantly harassed or send death threats, whatever it is, call someone's house, whatever it may be, please don't do that because it is extremely scary. It's extremely frustrating. And it's something of where you can disagree with someone. That is 100% fine. You are allowed to disagree with people. You are allowed to think, well, I don't agree with that personally, but you're not allowed to harass people or send them death threats. I talked about this with Quillag in a podcast I recently did. Just put it out today. And I'm about to sneeze. Great time to sneeze there.
Yeah. I mean, we're all allergic to trolls.
Yeah, just to reiterate for you guys, it's one thing. Like I get that a lot of you might be very passionate about a topic and that you want to get your ideas across and that you want to have your voice heard. And psychologically, I understand that because the internet at times can be a very isolating place for a lot of people. And I get that you just want to kind of scream into a void and have anyone hear you at any point. I get that mindset because I used to be there. but it's never okay to wish harm on people. It's never okay to wish harm on their friends. It's not okay. Just to put that out there is just a little preemptive thing before we deep dive into this subject matter, because I know how, unfortunately, who she's now like a close personal friend of mine. I've just started to get to know her, Alyssa McCantry, if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. She has been facing a harassment campaign against her and Kotaku that is I'll just put this out there. I'm not a fan of Kotaku at all whatsoever, but there are certain writers there that do amazing work, and they do an amazing job at just like they're people who are trying to survive in this industry, just like we are. And the fact that so many people have been hating on her and the words that she said in an article, and she was doing investigative journalism. People get mad and they like, we want investigative journalism. We want to be able to have people who do work and do things correctly. And she does that, and she gets shit on for it.
Yep. Yeah. It's.
Do you want to discuss your perspective of what you've had to go through personally? Because I want to be able to talk about all sides of this discussion, because I feel like it's such an important thing to discuss right now.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody knows my work, I've my whole career has been based on spotlighting diversity and giving more people a space to talk about the work that they do in the video game industry and all of that stuff. So like that conversation around what we do in our gaming industry is super, super important to me, and seeing, folks like Alyssa and Ash Parrish and a whole bunch of other folks get a whole bunch of hate, and myself included, for speaking up about trying to set the record straight about what we are seeing, not only from the personal perspectives of having been in the industry for a long period of time, because what is really interesting about all of this is all cyclical. Like, this happens often, and it's not a thing that just pops up. It's like whack-a-mole. It winds up kind of being this thing where it goes into the hole for a bit and then comes back up and does that on a periodic on a cycle, it seems. So I've been paying attention to this stuff for a minute, because I was like, what is going on in this conversation? And then started to dig a little bit, and kind of, you have a good spidey sense about like what's BS and what's not BS after you've been in that rodeo for more than one time. Like, again, I'm a black man on the internet. I've seen and heard everything that you can possibly say in a negative thing around race and around blackness, as long as I've been on it. So my radar and my kind of sniff test is pretty easy to be able to kind of go through. But having seen them be harassed, Sweet Baby, and all the folks kind of talking about it, and having firsthand knowledge of like how consultancy works within the gaming industry, it made it really funny, because I was like, one, I know these folks don't know what they're talking about. Two, I know what a harassment campaign looks like. And three, I have common freaking sense. Like, that's the easy part about all of it. Most of this is like reasonable common sense things. It is a easy analog or easy understanding if you understand cause and effect of how these things work and why people are motivated by what they are motivated by. We've seen these conversations happen before. And even in the first layer of where this is kind of started, and this kind of reemergence of this kind of same energy, it's all the same energy. And it's all the same reasonings, and it's all the same conversations that we saw happen, almost 10 years ago. It happened now.
Gosh, yeah, 2014.
Yeah, like 10 years ago, and now happening again. So none of the conversations were really, really that different in what we had already seen. So you already knew what the foundations were. And then once more folks kind of started to speak up about it in those circles, you would really be able to pinpoint and then break down like, all right, that's kind of stupid. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't really even work the way you think it works. And then you boil all that down, you strip all of that anger and all that frustration and all of that stuff away. And it really goes back to not understanding how diversity works, not understanding why diversity is important, having this idea what diversity is and having that be this mangled version that you want it to be, and then having all of that frustration thrown at people for trying to do their job in a reasonable and honorable way. So it winds up being all of those things together.
I'll be honest, I will never know the struggles of a black person. I will never begin to even comprehend it. But the thing is that people fight for diversity. We fight for this inclusion every single day in the gaming industry. What Sweet Baby does is, much like any other consultation company, is they will take the game. They're not changing it. They're advising the company on what needs to change, if anything. There's a perfect example of where, like, if you have Asian and indigenous people in a room, for example, who are creating a game, but they want to write on Black history and they want to write specifically on 2 Black characters, they need to have a consultation company come in and be like, okay, this is a proper assessment. This is the way it's supposed to be done. That's basically what's happening here. They're just helping with the games, helping them to be accurate. That's it.
And I'll even add this, as having done some of that work, or having done some of that work when I was working at Riot, and also having sourced some of the people who do that work while working at other companies. Here's the thing that most of those folks don't understand, and they continue to get wrong, is while they try to put this big hammer down on all the people who are doing that work, like Sweet Baby, and now they're trying to look at other companies and other games who are using diversity consultants for that kind of stuff. The thing they keep failing to understand is that consultants don't usually reach out to companies. Companies reach out to them first. They are asking for help because they understand that they want those stories, they want those worlds, they want those characters to be as robust and true to those cultures as possible. So it's an interesting thing where people magically forget, or again, I'm not even gonna say forget. And it's not even willful ignorance. It's just ignorance, where people don't want to understand how the process of game making works. When I was working at Riot, one of the things that we would do is we have these things called ERGs. And ERGs, if you worked in any corporate space, those are usually groups of folks who are either, like-minded or have a similar cultural or other background that they want to kind of coalesce around and talk about and be around and be able to, work together and share, resources around a lot of different things. So those employee resource groups are usually based on gender or race or ability or disability or any of those things. And one of the things that we would do in my job would be we'd have a new champion in League of Legends coming up. We'd have the team start on that process. Then we would get a ping from the teams who were building stuff, and they would say, hey, can your team look at this character and see if it is meeting the expectations of our ERGs? And does it feel like we are doing this character's justice by the way we're writing them, the way they were designing them, or doing all of that stuff? And the way we would offset that extra work, because ERGs are usually volunteer. Like you're going into, it's like a club. But sometimes we would ping them to say, like, all right, we had one that was called Riot Noir. Riot Noir, hey, these are our Black contingent of folks who work here. Can you take a look at this character who's going to be put to the game? They're from this diaspora. They're from this background, X, Y, and Z. Can you take a look at it? We had Riot Unidos, which was our Latin group. Can you look at this thing? Can you see the background that we're trying to give them? What's the things here that we're missing? Can you help us do that? But that's work that you're giving to people who already have a job. So you bring in a company like Sweet Baby or any of the other ones that I know of, and you say, hey, we want to offset that work to y'all. You do that work for us because you also have a critical eye and you're also not beholden to the company. So you can do that work in a free mind, in a free spirit, without feeling like you're tied to being like, we have to be nice about this thing or that thing. So it comes down to a lot of conversations around ignorance about the way games are made, and also this preconceived notion that people have that any diversity work is nefarious and is dangerous.
It's not.
And is shadowed. And it's not.
This is something that gets me so wound up, because this is an example I will use until my dying breath of where the world is made up of diversity. Of Black people, of people who have a skin condition. I forget what it's called exactly, but you have multiple tones throughout your skin.
Like vitiligo?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
You have white people, you have Puerto Ricans, you have so many different kinds of people. Why can't the games just be as diverse as the world that we're living in?
The thing that makes me laugh is that the folks who are having this conversation in that weird bubble, they will say the same thing. I've heard this by multiple people. They will say, games were already diverse. Why do we need DEI? Why do we need diversity consultants? And my answer to that is twofold. One, if we already had diversity and you're mad about it, why are you still mad about it? And they shift to this idea of forced diversity, which we can talk about if or not.
Yeah.
And the second layer of it is, if diversity was already there and we're all going to say that that was fine, it doesn't mean that diversity conversations and diverse characters were good characters. And that's the reason why we have people coming in and saying, yes, we had black characters. Yes, we had Latin characters. Yes, we had women in games. But they were written poorly by people who didn't reflect the cultures that were being written in.
Exactly. Like
So why do we...
There's a perfect example I have, actually. And it's from... excuse me. Trolls are making me cough. There's a perfect example I have, actually, of this. It was in The Last of Us Part 2. And it was where a synagogue was properly constructed. And it was the first time I ever saw that in a video game, of where I was like, oh my gosh, my Jewish heritage, it makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. And it was interesting because I saw that, and at the time, I didn't know that Neil Druckmann was Jewish. I didn't know he was Israeli. I didn't know any of that at the time. And just to see this come to life, and Dana's dialogue, it actually made me very emotional, because she said, we come from a long line of fighters. And that made me so emotional. It was actually like someone was finally representing us correctly. And this is why representation is so incredibly fucking crucial, because marginalized people do so much of the heavy lifting. We wouldn't have half of the things that we have right now if it were not for the Black community. We wouldn't have half of the things we have right now if it weren't for the Puerto Rican community. There are so many different things that people don't understand that go into what we utilize every day, from the words that we use to the music that we listen to, all of it. And it's so, like, even the fact that people got pissed off at the fact that Miles Morales is going to be made into the main Spider-Man. Like, people say, oh, we want more diversity. Oh, it's getting shoved down our throats. We don't want more of that. Then don't get fucking pissed off whenever Miles Morales is going to be the main Spider-Man. Revel in it. Enjoy it, because this is what's supposed to happen.
I still don't understand the idea around forced diversity, which is the new catchphrase for folks who don't know how to read. It winds up being this thing where people are like, oh, well, these things are getting crammed down our throats. And the thing that I push back on is, one, we're just now in the past 5 to 6 years really seeing these stories come to light and these characters be put into games in a considered and often basis. And what you would call forced, I would call reality, right? It's a difference between forced and what you think is forced is the fact that you don't understand that those people exist, and that those people have the same right to be in the same spaces as you do. And if you don't understand that that's a part of the way the world works, and that's on you to figure that out about you and how you navigate the world. Because I was born and raised in New York City, one of the most diverse places on the planet. I grew up with everybody across the planet. My one of the first girls that I wanted to date was like in junior high school. Young little red-haired Jewish girl who was so sweet, and she was so nice, and she was so great, and I was like, I like you a lot. You're really sweet. And we shared conversations around culture, but we were like in junior high school. We didn't have like actual words for it. I was like, you know what I mean? Like you're talking about the stuff that you eat when you're in the lunchroom. You're talking about your holidays. You're talking about those things. Like, you know, I grew up in a city where we celebrated Christmas, and we celebrated Hanukkah, and we celebrated Yom Kippur, and we celebrated all of those things together, because we were all part of this culture that New York, you know, for all of its ups and downs, it's a diverse place where we all are around each other, and we're celebrating those things, and we're learning about that stuff. I don't know what the rest of the folks who are having these issues went through, that they can't understand the shared spaces that we wind up having. So it feels really foreign to me in that way, where they're like, this stuff is being forced. And I was like, I'm learning so much more about other people's cultures through the games that I play these days, because we have people who are in those spaces who are making those games now. But
it's really fascinating to me how video games, any kind of media that we consume, it's all a learning experience. And it's so cool to be able to see either people accept this entirely, or it's very educational for even us to see people completely rejected, completely rejected. That way we know what kind of people we are dealing with in the community.
I love the way you put that. It is very much so of like seeing people reject the actual way the world is. That is scary.
It is,
because that is like you are so hell bent on seeing a thing in this very small truncated prism of a world, and I've just not been that person. I'm lucky enough to have lived with diversity all of my life. It's never not been a thing. So when people who have these kinds of mindsets, because again, there's like gradations on it, right? There's like the people who are super ignorant, and there's layers for those folks to be able to kind of dig into the conversation. Then there are folks who are trolls, and then there are folks who are like legitimately racist and all those kinds of stuff. So there's like layers to all of those pieces, but all of them coalesce around this idea of a thing that doesn't exist, which is scary and weird. So
and also there's also this nuanced conversation of where a lot of people who don't know and who genuinely want to learn, and I feel like that is the best thing that could come out of anything, of where they don't know, they ask what might be an insensitive question, and they genuinely care and want to learn better. And I feel like that's the best thing that can come out of a circumstance.
Yeah, I mean, I feel sad and pity for a lot of those folks, because they're missing out on a really beautiful world, and that's the part that makes me sad for them. Is like they're so mad and so upset about a thing that honestly doesn't even affect them in the biggest way. Like, it would be different if every game that we saw that came out of any level of the gaming industry was like, well, you know what? To play this game, you must be trans. Like, that's not the way this works. Like this is like, it would be different if it was like, this game is for blacks only. Like that, this is not the way this works. It doesn't, like, they are making this world that doesn't exist in their head and moving with all of this energy towards a goal that is regressive. It doesn't do anything but move us back to a space where we had really boring characters. We had characters that were poorly written and a lot of stuff. Like, I had major beef with characters like Barrett in the first Final Fantasy VII. Like, I thought he was pretty much a really big stereotype and a caricature, because he was like the big angry black dude, right? Which is that stereotype that we see in a lot of different spaces. We had Coltrane in Gears of War, which I thought was also a poorly written character. He was the big black brute who was not that smart and was kind of dumb and came through with these one-liners that were not that really well written, right? So, but people revere that character as being a good showcase of diversity, and I was like, you're all smoking the best crack. I don't understand where you get this idea that those characters were great. But
no, they weren't.
even in that space, we can agree to disagree, and I'm not going to come bum rush you and beat you up for it or call you all these weird names for it. I was like, look, we don't see that character in the same way, and we can learn to write characters in a better way, like Barrett we have now in the Final Fantasy Rebirth and Remake. That character is much better because black people were like, hey, this character isn't good. Can we fix this? And a Japanese company that doesn't deal, that there's a fairly homogenous community because of region and all of those things. There aren't all the black people in Japan. Let's be honest about it. But there was a push to say like, hey, we can make this better. And those folks listen. I'm sure that they brought in some version of a consultant to come in and help them fix that language and fix that character. So again, everyone is mad about the same thing over and over again when we're like, this is not going away, y'all. This is a thing that is already embedded into the way that games are made, and it's for the better. So figure it out.
Exactly. You know what? It's kind of like the parent that says, I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed in you right now.
Yeah, right.
It's kind of funny because I remember coming home from high school at one point, and you always take your shoes off when you go into the house. You smell the homemade cooking going. You say, oh my God, what's mom going to make tonight? And then dad comes over here and he's like, just stares at you. No explanation. Just stares. Yeah. And he's just like, we got a note from your teacher. And he's just like, I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed. That's what I think is so cool, is like we're seeing all of this resurgence in different languages. Like, for example, Far Cry 6.
Yeah.
My first Far Cry I ever played, and my favorite. And I get so much shit for liking that game because they're like, oh, what did you see in that game? It's like the story. The story is just so good. It's vibrant. It actually reflects what happens in these countries.
I mean, like, again, it goes back to that conversation of like, those teams have people who went in and made those. Like, again, Far Cry is a really up and down series. Like, there are some really stereotypical characters in those stories, and some that are better written because they're always kind of in a distant locale, trying to pull in that stuff. But those characters are at least kind of broader in their scope because of the work that teams like Sweet Baby would do. You know what I mean? Like, and again, like those characters, when you go into making a game, one of the things that we harp on a lot from folks who are doing work in the DEI space is you need to pull us in the beginning of the process so that we can help you with the way your characters and your worlds are built, instead of trying to shoehorn that conversation around diversity. That is actual forced diversity, is when you bring us in at the end of a project, because that means you haven't fully thought those characters out and those worlds out, and now you're trying to fix whatever you might have broken.
That's the biggest thing to take away. I want everyone to listen to that part because that's the biggest takeaway. Because if people always are complaining about forced diversity and everything, that's what forced diversity is. Not having characters in from the very beginning like you have in Forspoken, where you have the main female woman who is the lead, a black woman, which we don't normally see. And can I point something out, by the way?
Yeah.
We don't normally see it on the game covers as well. I've had this thought in the back of my head for the past year or so, but I was too afraid to speak out because people are people. And we mostly see this in the front covers of video games. We see someone who is white, or we see someone who is a magical being of some sort. We never see a black woman or a black man in front on game covers for the game box or for the game box art. When I saw it on Vampire the Masquerade Swan Song, it first occurred to me, I'm like, wait a second. And I actually went and counted in my collection how many people I saw who were black versus white. Mm-hmm. And it's shocking. It's so incredibly shocking. On the box art, you don't see diversity at all.
Oh, no. I mean, and even within that conversation, there's gradation within that, too. Like, you will hardly ever see a brown skin or dark skinned black woman on a video game cover. They're usually lighter, they're usually, light skin or kind of like, light brown skin. And it was the reason why everybody got so excited about Deathloop, was because people were like, oh my God, we're going to finally get a brown skinned woman on the front of a cover in that way. Or even homegirl who was in the Uncharted DLC that happened.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, that, and people get mad at that now because they're like, well, she was a strong woman. She beat up Nathan Drake, so she can't. Why? That's forced diversity
too. That's so insulting.
It's wild because, again, a lot of the proponents of a lot of this nonsense, it is super misogynist. It is super anti-black and brown. It is super LGBTQ. It is all of these things that are anti in the service of hyper-masculinity, whiteness, and all of this other stuff. That, of course, there are spaces that are going to be there with that still kind of has a space to go. But the cry has been, oh my God, men are being trampled upon because all these strong women are being put into these games. It happened in Justice League. They were like, how would you treat Batman like that, but you gave Wonder Woman a respectable death and you didn't give Batman a good death? Batman is cooler than Wonder Woman. They pissed on the Flash when he died, and I was like, that's a part of the story. Like, it's called Kill the Justice League. It's not Hug the Justice League. It's called Kill the Justice League. I mean, but it's like they talked about because there's this piece of lore that goes along with each character, and Wonder Woman's is basically like, basically like they're saying the lore of Wonder Woman in the game specifically was influenced by Sweet Baby because they made Wonder Woman sound like she is this much stronger woman and doesn't need men. I was like, do you know what Wonder Woman's backstory is? She comes from a island full of the strongest Amazonian women in that thing. They don't need men. They don't.
It's like saying Superman needs to have like some equivalent of Superman and Kryptonite making nonsensical. Like it's make it make sense, please.
It's because people don't and can't read. Like,
do we need to get them hooked on phonics?
Yes, we need hooked on phonics for a lot of people. It's like,
oh God, I'm showing my fucking age.
No, I mean, but look, it's that kind of stuff where it's just like, come on, y'all. Like, I understand this feeling. Again, there's a lot of feels in all of this, which I drill down into because that's the most important part. Feelings and facts are very different. Facts should be the things that influence your feelings. Yes, you come across a thing and you're instantly emoting about a thing. We're all human. I can understand that layer to it. But at a certain point, you have to look at those feelings and say, are they being influenced by anything factual here? And if they aren't, then you need to do that re-examination of your feelings. And people don't do that.
Yeah, they don't. They don't think inwardly before they speak out onto a platform. No. And that's what really I want to make sure that people understand. Like we point out all of this to say that we want the gaming space to be a better place. We don't want it to be filled with vitriol and toxicity and all of this. We want people to just understand and accept one another. If you want to disagree, do so respectfully. Like that's all we ask, you know? And it's so strange to see that Gamergate 2.0 has arisen just from lack of understanding, lack of research, lack of really utilizing the tools that you have in front of you to just, I know I said before, but understand what is in front of you. Oh, hi, Kat. Hi.
That's sweet.
This Binks.
Hey.
Hi, buddy. Oh, okay. You want to cuddle. All right, so to go on to one of our next topics, I want to talk about consoles because we're seeing a lot of misnomers, just miss stuff. Not a word, but I'm going with it. On consoles in general right now, we're seeing a lot of stuff happening with games of where Capcom, they just released, actually, at the time we're recording this today, you guys, Dragon's Dogma 2 just came out, so happy Dragon's Dogma 2 day. And we're seeing a lot of stuff happening where Capcom has put microtransactions into Dragon's Dogma 2, unfortunately. And the thing that, one thing I want to get across to you guys is that you don't have to buy them. They're just there. If you want them, you don't necessarily need them in the game because everything that is in the microtransactions is easily gettable, I want to say, within the game itself. So that's one thing. But Kahlief, I want to know your opinion on Xbox, where you think it's going to go in the future, and what you're excited for with Xbox currently.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of the Xbox brand. I think they're continuing to do really good work. I'm excited to see what they're going to do with the strategy pivot of putting some of their flagship titles on other platforms as well. I think that's a smart business move for them. I mean, I'm so excited for stuff like Hellblade 2 and games like that. Like Dragon's Dogma, I've been playing that and reviewing that on Xbox too, and it's been great. And I've been having a ton of fun with that stuff too. So like, I think the Xbox platform is in an okay space. Like, there's been a lot of doom and gloom in the Xbox community of late, which I think is a little bit hyperbolic and a little bit extra for no reason. But it's been something where, for me, as a person who has been playing games forever and has been really seeing the growth of the space, you know, I'm just looking forward to more dope games coming out, like getting, you know, Blizzard stuff and Activision stuff in Game Pass. I'm a big Game Pass, you know, proponent and lover of that stuff. That's great. I booted up my console the other day and was really hyped for MLB The Show and didn't have to drop $1 for it because it was in Game Pass. So, like, I think that there's a good space. I'm also really just interested to see what they're going to do with their like next layer of hardware, since we're hearing some rumblings about the PlayStation 5 Pro, and we heard Sarah Bond talk about in their business update about there being a potential kind of re-up in the late part of the year around hardware there, with some leaks that had come out from some conversations before about a all digital version of a new kind of upgraded console. So I think they're in a good spot. Like, I'm just not doom and gloom about any of this stuff. I see so much weird negative energy. Oh, this game went over to this other thing, and now this is the end of them being able to put out games. They're going to go third party, and what does this mean? And I'm not going to buy an Xbox because all this other stuff. And I'm like, I'm like, yo.
It's so weird to me. It's just like I've had to unfollow so many people as of late on Twitter because at first I'm like, oh, I like your energy. I like what you discuss. I'm willing to interact with someone I don't necessarily agree with, you know?
Yeah.
And then I just see it's all drama and it's like, well, okay, in post-production, cue sad, teary-eyed music. What does the world come to? Why is this happening right now the way it is? Why do people have to be such dingleberries?
I don't, and the weird thing is, like, I got tagged on some random thing the other day and tried to explain an idea around why that thing might be happening. And people still dismissed it for whatever reason. It could be they don't like me or they don't like the way I talk or, you know, they don't like my eyebrows. It could be whatever it is. But like, all of this energy for a thing that, one, I don't have any Xbox stock. Two, I don't control any of the money that works at Xbox, and I don't work at Xbox. And three, I am enjoying my life. Like at the bottom level of all of this, there's a lot of folks who are looking for ways, and you talked about it at the top of the show, which I thought was brilliant, was there is this space where people are having this emotive moment where they feel like they want to be seen. And they feel like this company is not seeing them by making these particular moves. And for me, when I look at it through my prism, I'm saying these folks are doing and making decisions that for you as a player, not this year, not next year, 5 years from now, will have a really good space to look at your games, your library, and all of that stuff and be in a much better position than you were today. And that's the way I think about half of this stuff. Even if it doesn't come to fruition, like I could be totally wrong about all of the things I'm saying right now. But even if I am, I still will have dope games to play. Xbox is not going to die tomorrow. And even if it did, the gaming space is in the biggest pivot point in its existence. It is making the most money that's ever made for good and for bad reasons. It's also the biggest form of entertainment on the planet, bypassing music and movies. So like video games aren't going anywhere. So like all of this fussing feels like fussing for no reason. And people get mad at me for saying that. And I'm like, why are you so mad? I don't get it.
People just want to be able to feel like they belong. And I think that's what it comes down to, because people look at people like yourself and me and Paris and Greg, which, by the way, hi, Greg Miller, if you're watching this, love your stuff. You know, anytime that I see Greg, for example, do something of where he's yelling into the camera and Stella is right next to him and she's just like, I'm getting ready for this now. It's going to happen at any moment. And he goes on one of his spiels. I feel like he is an NPC game character that is the most emotive and most conscious in the most chaotic, concise way possible.
1,000%. Like, it's the reason why I love Greg and I love Stella and I love, Ryan McCaffrey when I get a chance to do stuff at IGN and that team and Destin and all those folks. Like, the idea that none of us care about the industry is false. Like, the idea that we're shilling is false. The idea is that we are not paying attention is also false. It's just that we have seen enough stuff and enough patterns emerge that we're like, what's the worst that can happen here? And most times the worst things that the internet is looking for and saying is going to happen, it doesn't even happen anywhere close to any of that stuff at all anyway. So like we're buffering our own emotions because we're like, we know most of these people are all away at level 10 and most of us are at 3. And I'm like, all right, be at 10. Like be at 10, but be nice and be at 10. You know what I mean? You don't have to be you don't have to be a jerk at 10. But people are jerks at 8. And I'm like, yo, calm down. Like, it's not that deep. There's real things happening in the real world that are infinitely more important and scarier and more worrisome than you not seeing a game go to your platform and going on another one. Yeah, so I'm like, exactly. Perspective is a big thing for me. And I'm like, a lot of these folks don't have reasonable perspective.
Also, they just need a Snickers at the same time as well.
Or some weed. Like, go do something.
It's true.
Do something.
Exactly. Yeah. It's supposed to make people happy. You know that thing? Like, I'm going to talk to the trolls right now, kind of passive aggressively. But that thing that you can do with your mouth, you lift it up. It's called a smile. You might want to try it sometime, you dingle fuck. Wow,
Agreed.
really, I just embraced Greg really much there.
I mean, you're both right. That's the answer. You're both
Anytime
correct.
that I go onto Twitter, I have two thoughts that go across my head. One, what would Greg do? And what would Paris do? And it's a combination of being both an asshole in the most respectful way, but also being kind and not being a jerk.
I try so hard, and Paris and I talk about it all the time. I was like, I think about it this way too, and I think about like Paris is Malcolm. I'm Malcolm X, and he's Martin Luther King in those ways, because he's very much more like way more diplomatic, and I'm like, yo, if you act up, I'm gonna give you the energy that you brought. I'm gonna reciprocate in the same way, and it's probably gonna be bad for me in my career, but it's still gonna be fine. Like, again, this is the internet. You can close the internet off when you need to.
Exactly,
turn it
it's
off.
like an NPC. They're just NPCs.
And again, like, I don't want it to be like one of those things where it feels like I'm talking down to people, but I really do want it to be a thing where, like, a lot of these folks need to work on themselves. There's a lot of unhappiness here that is within the in between the lines of all of the stuff that people are doing. Like, somebody in that Gamergate thing, they were like, you know, when it came in a piece that I think Alyssa did or Ash did, which were both really fantastic. You should go check those out. One of the people who was in that Discord was like, when I am being racist, this is when I'm most happy. And that stuck with me, because I've seen everything gross on the internet at this point. I've been called every name I can possibly call. You just see my DMs and all the stuff that people send me, the pictures and the things that they send me. But that stuck out to me, because that is a real showing of who and what the human condition is. And I look at that and I pity that, because I'm like, man, you must have a sad life. And you have friends who have a sad life, who you're all being sad together with and not figuring out how to be better in this life. And I'm just too old to give a shit. I'm like, that sucks for you, bro. I'm like, that sucks for you to be this mad and be this sad and to have no other outlet to make the world better.
What's interesting is that, like, people have the complete capacity to be a Hitler, but they also have the capacity to be a Malcolm X.
Totally.
And that's the thing of where people don't choose to be good voluntarily. That's why for a lot of the time, and we've even had conversations about this on Twitter and everything, of where it terrifies me what some people are capable of, because it only takes that one person and that, hey, what are you doing? I'm trying to have a serious moment here, Banks, and you put your paw up there reaching for shit.
So good. So
I'm
good.
keeping that in.
Keep it in. But you're right. You're right.
Oh my gosh. Okay, fine. I can't. Do you want to be let out? Is that what you want? Give me 1 second.
Yeah. You're good.
So the next question I have is a bit more of a fun question. Now, normally I would say, you know, which console do you prefer? Switch, Steam Deck, Xbox, or PS5? I'm not going to ask that. I'm going to ask you, what game do you prefer on each console?
Ooh, I am a big Mortal Kombat fan, so I play that mostly on PlayStation, because I'm a big fighting game fan. On Xbox, ooh, that's a good one, because I'm playing a bunch of stuff right now. Yeah, that's the game. I think it might even be MLB The Show. Like, I think, well, I mean, I'm playing Dragon Dogma on there right now, which has been a lot of fun. I mean, I play Call of Duty, like, in a weird stereotypical way. My Xbox is still my shooter box. Like, I play a lot of shooters there, because a lot of my friends still play on that side of the fence. So yeah, like, I'm still playing a bunch of Call of Duty over there, and Battlefield and stuff, and, you know, Fortnite when folks wind up getting on, and all those kinds of things. So it's like, but I feel like right now the stuff that's on that side of the fence has really just been really nice and diverse. I'm, you know, playing a Souls-like game and playing baseball again and all that kind of stuff. So, like, all those things are kind of intertwined. But I play a ton of stuff there.
You were a Souls-like person.
I've like Elden Ring was the first Souls-like game, first Souls game that I ever beat. I was playing a bunch of Bloodborne before that, in the Soul space. But yeah, once I forgot where I was going, I was like, I'm giving up. I don't remember where I was. I played something else, and then I forgot where I was going. So I was like, I'm stopping. But I play a ton of stuff all over the place at this point.
Me collectively with my almost 400 hours in the game going over here.
Mm-hmm. I'm like, we need to do a ride along of Bloodborne and like start from the beginning and be like, Ariel, show me where I need to go. Like, where do I need to go? Where's the next place to go?
It's actually interesting that you say that because I'm doing a tutorial video to show people how to parry only Orphan of Kaz and Lady Maria. Ooh. And I feel like that might help people a lot because those are the two bosses that people think, I'll never get past it. It's so difficult. And it's like, oh, young grasshopper, how you will learn.
Love it. That's great.
So for me, I would have to say because I'm more of a PC user than I am a console user. On PC right now, it's Baldur's Gate 3. I recently finished that last month and it's so good. It's so good. The psychology in that game and the way the story is built, it's just incredible. It's magnificent. So yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 on PC. On my Nintendo Switch, I would have to say Cozy Grove. It's an indie game and it's really, really interesting of where you're there and you're like not resurrecting like dead bears, but you're telling the story of each ghost bear that is on your campsite. And it's so cute and it's so fun and it's cozy. Like you go to sleep at night and you're just like, oh, okay, want to turn on Cozy Grove, have a cup of tea and just chill out. It's wonderful.
Love it.
On PS5, Demon Souls. Absolutely Demon Souls.
I need to go back to Demon Souls, yeah.
It's so good. It's so good. It's kind of silly at points because it's like this, like with that being the remake, I looked back at the footage on YouTube of people who uploaded the original and I'm like, whoa, this is a really amazing remake. This is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. What's the other one with the two worlds, the Umbral and the other one? I keep forgetting the name of it. It's,
Lords of the Fallen.
Lords of the Fallen. I need to go back to Lords of the Fallen because that game is dope too.
That's the one I'm currently reviewing and doing a playthrough of right now. It's very fun, but also the FPS drops. Tad annoying.
Yep.
Tad annoying. On Xbox, it's a mix right now because I'm going to be diving into Dragon's Dogma 2 on Monday, but right now it's Elden Ring because I'm prepping for that DLC.
Oh, right. I forgot the DLC is dropping. Yeah, good call.
I'm so excited because, it's going to give me so many more reasons to hate a boss, but I'm ready for it.
I'm with you.
So, okay, another question I have, it's a fun one. It's one that I normally asked on my other podcast, The Hunter's Cafe, where we talk about Souls and Souls-like stuff primarily. But I want to ask you, if you were to have a pizza party, number one, what pizza would you get? And number two, what game characters would you invite to said pizza party?
Ooh, I would get Cole from Deathloop to come through because he was super fun. I liked him a lot. He was like a really fun character. The main character from Shadow of the Damned, which I love that game because he was a kind of playful idiot. He was fun. Who else would come and hang out? I'm trying to think of some characters who are really well written of late. Homegirl from Control, the main character of Control, because she's dope. I love her. And I kind of liked Saga too, like Saga from Alan Wake 2.
I loved Saga so much.
Saga was rad. Like I think Saga had a really interesting kind of take for a lot of different things. That'd probably be my like instant 4 that I could think of off the top of my head. And the kind of pizza I would get, oh man, there's 2 different kinds that I would probably, 3 different kinds. Either it would be a Hawaiian pizza because I love Hawaiian pizza, which is super good. So pineapples and ham. I also love a really good meat lover's pizza, so throw a bunch of meat on a pizza. I'm down for that. But there was this one pizza spot back in the Bronx, and they would do basically like, it's not even like calzones. It's basically like big squares of pizza, but like it's not normal, just like pizza dough. It's like a little bit thicker, but it's more like focaccia, but it's like all layered with stuff in between. So it was like salami, pepperoni, like mozzarella. Olives, tapenade, like really good pesto, and they would throw all that stuff in there, and they would just smash it between 2 pieces of that bread and throw it in the oven. Oh, and then the other thing that's not really like pizza, but it was like the perfect thing out of a pizza shop, which is also not pizza, and again goes back to the conversation around diversity. is there was a moment in time where pizza places in New York used to sell beef patties, like Jamaican beef patties, but they would open the Jamaican beef patty up and throw pepperoni and cheese in it.
I remember that actually.
Oh my
so
God,
good.
they were so good. It was like the worst heart attack, but it was so good for you. Like not good for you. Tasted really good. I missed that
like
a ton.
A Korean spot that I heard of in what was it? It was in Chinatown, and they would create kind of like this pho concoction, but it would be beef bulgogi, and you would have the ramen noodles, and then you had the kimchi all stirred on top with like a spicy gochujang.
Yeah.
And it's so good.
Oh, that sounds so good.
Oh, I'm gonna get hungry right now. I didn't have.
I know. I'm starving. That's good.
So let's see. The pizzas I would have for mine, I'm going to get two. I'm going to get mushroom and broccoli with like a thick crust and plain because I don't want anybody complaining. I don't need that.
Like you give them that pizza. Like, here's this one is for y'all, so you can not fuss.
And then I'm going to get the guy from Bloodborne with the whirligig saw because that's already a pizza cutter. So might as well. The other person I would invite would be, oh gosh, I'm trying to think. Sam from Death Stranding.
Ooh, yeah.
Good storytelling. We need like a bonfire session with him. Another one, Artorias from Dark Souls. Gotta have Artorias with me. Who else would I invite? Lilith from Diablo.
Oh,
I need some good tea. I need some good drama.
I had a little crush on Lilith. I know I'm not supposed to have a crush on a demon, but Lilith was a baddie.
Though. Actually, fun fact, in Judaism, we don't celebrate her character, but she is in Jewish mythology, and you can technically, if you want to, pray to Lilith. So you can definitely do that. I know my mythology is probably off, but that's something that I've heard through storytelling from Hebrew school and everything like that. So yeah, if you want to pray to a demon, go for it. Let's see. There's two other people I would try to invite. I would probably invite also, oh my God, Senua. Absolutely. And Saga, because also Saga has some really great stories, but she would keep everyone in line. That's the thing.
Yeah.
FBI, got to keep everybody in line at a pizza party. And to crash the party, Radon from Elden Ring.
Oh, yeah. That would be good. That's a good pull. I like that.
Yeah. So there's some other fun questions I kind of want to go into. If you were in the gaming industry, well, you are in the gaming industry. I don't have to say, Ariel, what the fuck are you doing right now? Jesus Christ. Being in the gaming industry, you see so many different kinds of games. You see so many VR titles coming out. If you were to create your own concoction of a game, be a combination of horror or cozy, whatever it is, what would be your own personal concoction that you would create?
I've not seen a story take place that is kind of one that I grew up in. So like there are movies that I've seen that kind of reflect what living in the hood would be. There was an interesting kind of take at that game from a group some years ago called We Are Chicago, where you kind of walked around and you were in VR and kind of like living the life of a young black kid. And like you're the brother and you have your little sister and you're kind of walking through the neighborhood and going through the stuff there. But like no one has really done a like action adventure game that's been in the hood. And I'm like, that would be dope. Because like New York as a background has so many different things that are just like perfect for lore and perfect for, doing the real recreation of New York in a real way. Like GTA has gotten really close, but they like don't care about the boroughs. They don't like, they only focus on Manhattan or whatever the fake version of Manhattan would be. But like, I want a game set in New York. You're a kid who's in the hood. And if you've ever seen the movie Juice, which was a really good movie, I want a game that's like the movie Juice. Because you have these four characters. There's a little bit of espionage in there. There's a little bit of like good storytelling about like, changing, the back and forth of like a friend and foe story. Like there's some interesting layers there that I think no one has really poked at. And that would probably be what I'd want to do.
That sounds so interesting though, man. I honestly think if I were to have a game created, it would have more of a not stereotypical Jewish person, but it would have like a healthily done character who is trying to go through. And for me, psychology is my thing. Like, I got my degree in psychology. It's always going to be a part of me. So I want a horror game to be based on the person's existential crisis going through their own religion.
Ooh, that would be dope. Yeah,
like
that would
questioning
be cool.
God, questioning motives, questioning the church or a synagogue, whatever it is. And I feel like that would cause so much chaos for a good reason in the community.
That would be fun. That would be really interesting too. Yeah, that would be cool. I like that.
Yeah. Like, and you can even have a save point be the Bible. Like, not desecrated or anything, but write your own passage in the Bible as your save point.
Ooh. Or what would it be like if you could well, I know that would be blasphemous to some people, but like if you're really thinking about religion, like the Bible has been rewritten multiple times at this point.
Yeah.
But what would it be like to rewrite the Bible? But like do like your own version of it that's more modern in that way, and like take pieces of all of the chapters and all that stuff and
yeah,
like
what would we
redo
fix? The New Testament, the Old Testament, what kind of
Right?
version
Like,
do we want?
Yeah, that would be rad. That would be so interesting. I like that.
So yeah, it's interesting because it's just like stories are what make the game world the game world. If we didn't have the stories that we have, we wouldn't have the video games we do.
Yeah, agreed for sure.
So one of the last topics I want to get into is what made you want to get into this industry?
Ooh, I mean, I was always a player of games since I was very, very young. I think I was at this moment, I was working an old job back home in New York, and I was not feeling very smart. And I was like, I'm doing this work and it's kind of rote and I'm doing the same thing every day. And it was like, you know, what does that mean for me as a person who wants to kind of do something around a hobby? And that started from a blog, and then the blog turned to the podcast. But the podcast, the kind of real impetus was, I remember seeing a couple folks who were in the industry. They were working on Game Trailers TV at the time. It was Ngai Kroll and another gentleman named Will O'Neill. And it was the first time I'd seen black folks, especially black men, being in the video game space and talking about video games from this really smart and nuanced and like really brilliant perspective. And I was like, I would like to figure out what that means for someone like me. If they're able to do that, can I do something like that? That would be really cool. And that was like the beginnings of it. It was like really just again, that classic level of representation, which is seeing someone who looks like you do a thing that you want to do and wondering if you can do that same thing too, was the real start for all of this stuff. And, you know, now we're 10 years into the game, doing Spawn on Me, and now Spawnies is a thing that is catching fire in a lot of different ways with our award show. But it was really that kind of like old school version of representation of being like, if you see it, you can be it, and that's kind of great.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. And you know, it's so wholesome to see that, because we need more people telling their stories in a way that shows people like, hey, I'm doing this thing. Like, you can easily do this same thing that I'm doing. You just have to get outside yourself. And like, it's difficult. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it's so incredibly difficult to put yourself out there, and to, especially in front of like thousands or possibly millions of people, to either get critiqued or judged or whatever it is. But I feel like, and I know that you can relate to this, the passion for what you're doing in getting your voice out there and wanting to make a difference trumps it all.
I mean, you need a lot of folks to kind of like push you into a direction too, right? Like the kind words that you get from folks over the years is really important, especially if you're trying to do, you know, important work around representation, like what I'm getting a chance to do at Spawn on Me. I remember very, very specifically getting an email from a German listener, and they were like, we had talked about this kind of combination of the four pillars of hip hop and how those things are connected to video games. So like, you know, DJing, graffiti, you know, rapping and breakdancing. And I got my first piece of fan mail from this gentleman in Germany, and he was like, I never thought about video games through a prism of black people playing them, and how you connected those pieces was really, really, really well done. And I took that email that I got because I was pretty sad because our numbers weren't great in the beginning of the show, and we were trying to figure out like what was that going to be, and do you continue to do it because you get that first, like we're doing it, and then you're like hit that wall of like, but no one's listening. And I got that email, and I ran and showed it to my wife, and my wife was like, "Wow, I didn't know that this was touching people in that way," and I didn't either, and it was great because it was that one moment where I was like, my small podcast with me and my homies that I record at my kitchen table here in Brooklyn when I was in Brooklyn got all the way to Germany, and someone in Germany across the planet is listening to my words. And that told me that, that there's a space for all of us here, and that there's a conversation of like being your fullest self and having a mission and understanding what that mission is and sticking to it while you fumble your way through the process, because we're all fumbling our way through the process. You can have a real impact on someone's life. And that's at the end of the day, that's what I feel like all of this work is for. Is I've been lucky enough to have people, tell me, this story made me think about this in this way. You helped me to want to podcast myself and make content, or, we've had so many numerous things happen throughout our show. Like our show has been taught in syllabuses in college courses. Like there's been stuff that has happened throughout the years. Like books have been written, and we've been sourced in some of these books and stuff. So it's like, you can have an impact on the world. That's the reason why a lot of that stuff that's happening right now, I'm like, this doesn't mean anything. And I want folks at home to understand that. Like, you have an amazing host scenario who's like been doing this work for a long period of time, like who's brilliant at what she does and is really thoughtful and really thinks about not only putting on a good show for all of you at home, but like building a good relationship with all of you at home, to understand that all of these conversations have a meaning, and that you're being, you're having this, relationship with the host and with the audience. And it takes a lot for people to really open up themselves to a space of people in the public being able to ridicule you and think about the way you work and all that kind of stuff. But all of that comes with a really good price if you're still doing good work. And that's the reason why I just appreciate having the platform that I have, continuing to grow it, and continue to have wonderful folks like you and other people tell me that the work means something to them. So it's always great to be able to do that and reflect on that.
I'm willing to get in my feels. That is so nice. Honestly, like, it's really great to just be able to have people who I respect in my life, be able to come on here and talk about their stories, talk about gaming, how it's impacted them, how they've been able to make differences like this. Like, it's so cool to be able to see, like, I don't know, it's kind of like a proud mom moment whenever I see them do well. It's like, God, that's so cool. Yes, yes, I love it so much. And it makes me so giddy inside, because it's like, if I see someone accomplish something, or if I see, like you, for example, like with the Spawnies, I was in the chat and I was seeing the numbers go up, and I was seeing people getting so excited. I was like, oh, this is just so cool. Yeah. We have I really do believe we have a very short time on this planet. And I think, often, we are so small in comparison to what the universe is. Like, we are ants on a spinning rock in space. Like, anytime I get in a plane, I'm like, oh, wow. Like that, like, you know what I mean? Like, and that's not even like seeing the grand scope of the universe, right? And I'm like, man, we fight over so many small, insignificant things. And we fight over all these small differences that actually don't really matter. And the things that do matter are connection and being in a good place where you can feel like this existence means something. And for the folks who can't do that, I feel bad for them. And the folks who are doing that work every day and finding good ways to connect with other humans and showcase and share the passions that they have in good and reasonable and fun ways. Like, we are the folks who are making the planet move in a lot of different ways. And that's beautiful stuff to be able to be a part of and see. So I rock with that. I love that. I love that so much. I feel like that's a wonderful place to stop this off at for this podcast. I do have to say, though, before we go, if anyone decides to leave hateful comments or comments that are just, they don't leave like the palate cleansed to some degree, I will delete these comments. And I've actually had questions from people saying, why'd you delete my comments? And I just reply back to them, I deleted because you were just being a jerk. So Yep. Yeah. So please think before you type and think before you hit send. That is all on that. But you guys, I just want to say big shout out, Kahlief. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was an absolute pleasure having you here.
Thank you again for having me. And seriously, I want to give you more flowers before I go. You are really, really good at what you do. I know that you as a producer of content and a maker of content, I want you to know that 4,000 is just going to be a small number in comparison to where you're going to go. Like, you have a wonderful heart. You really care. And it comes through in everything that you do. So I want you to understand that. And know that, like, again, spreading light on this planet is hard in a world where everybody is trying to throw dirt. And being a person who's trying to do that work, that makes you very special in this space. So don't lose that. Continue to hold on to that and try to figure out good ways you can find other good people who are doing that work. And you'll be in a much better position to continue to do the dope work that you do. And it's been fantastic. It's been fantastic to see you continue to grow in that space. So continue to keep pushing.
It just means so much. Thank you. It means a lot coming from you. I really, really appreciate that.
Word. Whatever.
Yeah, but if you guys like our faces and what we do, please be sure to subscribe and hit that bell down below. I make videos every weekday here on YouTube. May you find your worth in the waking world, dear hunter. Stay casually nerdy, and I will see you all in the next video. Umbasa.